Step into the realm of the divine as this holy message unfolds, igniting your spirit with timeless truth. They're going crazy trying to figure out who you are at the moment, chosen one. Who is this person? The folks who attacked you are anxiously questioning one another. What are they? After everything we threw at them, how are they still standing? They are frantically asking practitioners for answers, pleading with entities for knowledge, and demanding to know who is protecting you and why their most potent attacks continue to fail. By the end of this revelation, you will know why the person who attempted to destroy you is now in that hospital bed, why money is disappearing from your enemy's accounts right now, and why you are going to get a fortune that will permanently silence all of your critics. Someone you fully trusted was the first to be betrayed. Someone in your life was engaging in a risky game. While they pretended to be concerned about your welfare, laughed at your jokes, and smiled in your face, they were actually recording every detail of your life, including your routine, your vulnerabilities, your schedule, and your dreams. They were then reporting this information to a group of people who wanted you to disappear. This individual believed they could control you eternally while working for their true masters. Thus, they felt they were untouchable. They told themselves that you trusted them so much that you would never find out they were lying. They misjudged the consequences of betraying a chosen one, which was their one grave mistake. This double agent is currently dealing with such serious repercussions that they are beginning to doubt all of their preconceived notions about reality. Their family is turning against them. Their money is vanishing due to unexplained emergencies, and their health is deteriorating in ways that physicians cannot explain. And that's only the beginning of what lies ahead for them. They weren't acting alone, which is what makes this betrayal even more heinous. This was not the jealousy or animosity of a single individual. What you witnessed was a well-planned plot by several people who got together behind closed doors, plotted your demise, and believed they could all work together to eliminate someone who was protected by God. They were unaware that every gathering, every scheme, and every malevolent intent was being documented in the spiritual world. They were unaware that evidence was being gathered for a trial. The charges that will soon be submitted in the cosmic court were being prepared. When social sabotage and gossip weren't enough to bring you down, this network decided to break boundaries that most people aren't even aware exist. The tactics they used to attack you will shock you. They resorted to spiritual warfare, employing techniques so sinister and prohibited that even seasoned practitioners forewarned them of the dangers. In order to bind your spirit, drain your life force, and transfer your power to themselves, they collected personal belongings that belonged to you, such as hair from your brush, clothes you'd worn, photos of you looking joyful, and objects you'd touched. They chanted for your destruction as they burned candles over your portrait. They made effigies of you and tormented them in the hopes that this would cause real pain to you. Some even went so far as to communicate with beings from lower spiritual planes and offer sacrifices in return for the ability to harm you. Blood was shed as powers that profit from human suffering demanded your destruction. Animals were slain in your name, and personal belongings were set on fire while curses were uttered over the flames. If you feel the divine love, now is the time to share. Click the Super Thank You button on YouTube to contribute $50 or more and help us spread God's blessings. What you do is being watched and serves as a seed, and in the future it will come back to you a millionfold. They believed they were dealing with a regular individual who would fall victim to these assaults. They were unaware that they were going after someone whose spiritual defense functions on a plane beyond their comprehension. In real time, every ritual they carried out was being undone. Each curse was being returned to its originator. At your spiritual boundaries, every being they called was being rejected and sent back to demand payment from their summoners. Everything altered with what followed. As your adversaries carried out their sinister rites and congratulated themselves on their cunning, something remarkable started to occur in your life. You began to overcome challenges that ought to have crushed you. In areas where you had previously struggled, you started to succeed. Suddenly, opportunities began to arise. Your adversaries looked on in despair as their strikes not only failed, but also appeared to be making you stronger. You rose higher the more they sent against you. You grew more unbreakable the harder they attempted to break you. Your spiritual gifts grew stronger the more they tried to sap your vitality. It seemed as though you were consuming their assaults and using them as fuel to further yourself. This is when your assailants started to panic. They were baffled as to why their tried and true strategies were failing. They were unable to understand why you continued to get stronger rather than weaker. They started to suspect that you could be more than they had first believed. Their entire worldview was about to be shattered by the reality of who you truly are. Your opponents contacted more powerful spirits and sought advice from darker practitioners in an attempt to understand why their attacks were not succeeding. They promised these troops anything they desired in return for your destruction, and they established more legally binding agreements and offered more sacrifices. They were utterly scared of what followed. These beings were unprepared for what they saw when they came towards you. A chosen one acting under divine authority, encircled by armies of warrior angels, and linked to a power source that rendered their own skills appear insignificant. After seeing your spiritual shield, these evil spirits ran away in fear. Some were destroyed upon touch because they were so overcome by the holy light that surrounded them. Others withdrew instantly, but not before sending a frightful warning to the people who had called them. You have led us to someone we cannot touch. You have misled us about your target's characteristics. Payment is still necessary. These beings were now enraged and ravenous, but since they were unable to consume you, they focused on the only source of money, the individuals who had first called them. Your adversaries discovered that the very forces they believed they controlled were consuming them. Finding out that a member of your own family had accepted payment to take part in your demise, someone who was meant to love and protect you and who was actually part of your bloodline, was one of the most heartbreaking betrayals. Your adversaries couldn't have gotten inside information from this family member in any other manner. Only those who have endured hell with a smile and emerged radiant are eligible to join the Obsidian Inner Order. You came here to remember who you are, and we remember with you, not to win people over. This is a war room for the spiritual elite, a headquarters for people who leap time, break curses, and bend reality. It is not a community. Weekly Zoom calls feature live frequency upgrades during which the curtain lifts and dragons speak codes that unlock. Because, let's face it, most people can't manage what you carry inside of them. You'll have access to elite downloads, energy technologies, and ancient transmissions that weren't intended for the general public. You revive rather than heal. You take back. You rule. If you're ready to join the anointed and are sick of superficial nonsense, click the link in the description. After then, you become the source in the Obsidian Inner Order. They provided information regarding your early traumas that might be utilized against you in rituals. They divulged family secrets that were supposed to remain confidential. They gave you access to objects from your history that you might use to launch spiritual assaults. They even assisted in planning the exact moment when you would be most at risk. They believed that the money they got in return would help them with their financial issues. They persuaded themselves that they had good reasons for betraying you, such as jealousy of your gifts, resentment of your success, or a sense of entitlement stemming from family ties. They failed to take into account the fact that betraying a chosen one invites generational curses into your lineage and results in more than simply financial loss. Now, this family member is witnessing the breakdown of their life in ways that are almost unearthly. Due to unforeseen costs and emergencies, the money they received is vanishing. The turbulence they brought into the family line is having an impact on their own kids. Their health is deteriorating quickly. As the truth about what they did starts to come to light, their relationships are falling apart. At the same time, an even more startling betrayal was taking place. When family betrayals and spiritual assaults failed to demolish you, your adversaries chose to resort to physical force. They employed someone whose responsibility it was to deal the death blow, someone who was meant to put a permanent end to your story by any means necessary. This person thought you were simply another target, so they accepted the contract. With the same icy efficiency they'd applied to others, they analyzed your habits, identified your patterns, and got ready to finish their goal. They received good compensation and detailed instructions on when and how to behave. Your adversaries thought that this would finally and permanently resolve their issue. Brother, whatever is done in faith is returned in God's abundance. You can donate $100 using the Super Thank You button and be part of this divine call. If your roots are connected to Him, your fruit will be blessed. When this assassin approached you, something extraordinary occurred. They sensed your energy and discovered something they had never experienced in their professional lives, the distinct presence of someone working under heavenly protection. They were more uneasy the closer they approached to you. Every time they considered finishing their task, their customary confidence vanished, their hands started to shake, and they were overcome with a sense of dread. Every cell in their body seemed to be shouting warnings about the seriousness of the error they were about to do. At last, they were unable to complete it. It was this professional killer who had never broken a contract that was unable to hurt you. They actually started operating subconsciously to keep you safe from the folks who had employed them. Your adversaries were discovering that when they saw your actual character, even their most reliable weapons turn into your pals. In the process of planning attacks on your person and spirit, your adversaries also learned something that made them even more desperate. You are about to inherit a huge amount of money as well as spiritual abilities, divine authority, and cosmic power that have been building up in your family for many generations. By forging documents, falsifying signatures, and filing fraudulent claims with the authorities, they persuaded themselves they could take it through legal manipulation. Some even tried to have you declared legally incapable so they could claim guardianship over your possessions. They thought they could use papers to somehow overturn heavenly will if they could lawfully take what was spiritually yours. They believed they could sabotage worldly processes to deny you heavenly gifts, so they lavished vast sums of money on attorneys, court costs, and bribes. Before the legal procedures were even finished, they had already started allocating your fortune among themselves since they were so sure of their strategy. They failed to realize that stealing a chosen person's heavenly heritage is no more possible than stealing the sun's brightness. Spiritual authorities were documenting every attempt to scam you. Every falsified signature added to the evidence already being gathered against them in criminal proceedings. Everything they believed to be true was about to be shattered by the revelation of your true identity. You may have questioned why you continued to survive things that destroyed others up until this point in your trip. You may have wondered why their attacks seemed to make you stronger instead of weaker. You may have wondered why even experienced murderers couldn't bring themselves to hurt you. You're not simply a chosen one in the traditional sense. You're a seraphim in human form, a creature of such high spiritual frequency that you're effectively acting as a heavenly agent in the material world. The answer will astound you. A portion of your consciousness is outside the domain where typical spiritual assaults are effective. This explains why their curses failed, why their paid practitioners kept failing, why their magic didn't work on you, and why even evil beings ran away from your energy. An angel cannot be cursed, divine light cannot be hexadecimalized, and someone acting under cosmic power cannot be bound. This is what your opponents sensed, but were unable to comprehend as they were frantically attempting to understand who and what you were. They were aware that you were different and that you followed laws they didn't understand, but they made the grave error of believing that they could use dark magic at the level of the streets to subvert heavenly authority. They were going to drown in the repercussions, which was like attempting to battle the ocean with a water cannon. You were getting protection and direction from places they couldn't even fathom, while your adversaries were planning and scheming in this world. You were downloading from spiritual guidance, accessing other realms as you slept every night, and being informed of their intentions before they were carried out. Your forefathers put an extra effort to protect you. This was the perfect moment that generations of strong spiritual warriors had been waiting to show off their defensive skills. Forces beyond the physical world were intercepting every attack your opponents launched. Ancestors were rerouting every curse they transmitted because they would not allow their bloodline to suffer. You never had to fight this battle alone. You had a whole army of spiritual guardians on your side, and they were growing more and more incensed at the foolishness of those who believed they could hurt someone in their care. In the meantime, your meditations and dreams were also providing you with strategic knowledge. Before your adversaries could carry out their intentions, you were shown them. Countermeasures were being offered to you before they were even necessary. You weren't even aware that you were getting ready for victory. Because of your unrestricted access to higher dimensions, you were unstoppable. Your awareness was not restricted to this reality, which is why you were always one step ahead of them and their surprise attacks never caught you off guard. This scared them since they were starting to understand the full extent of what they had gotten themselves into. Not only were their spiritual attacks failing, but they were also backfiring with terrible intensity. Authorities were discovering their attempts at legitimate thievery. The assassin they had hired had changed sides. They were being devoured by their evil spirits rather than you. At last, they realized they hadn't targeted a regular person. When they realized that they had declared war on someone who was acting under heavenly protection, panic broke out. They were overcome with fear when they realized that each attack they had launched had resulted in karmic debt that needed to be paid. As they searched for a way out of the spiritual trap they had set for themselves, their desperation drove them to even more drastic actions. Some made an attempt to escape to other nations in the hopes that being far away would shield them from the repercussions of their acts. Others looked for stronger practitioners who might be able to undo their actions. Some even tried to bargain with various spiritual forces, sacrificing more in order to be shielded from the karma they had produced. They were caught in a web they had created for themselves, and every effort to break free only made matters worse. Geographical bounds are irrelevant to the spiritual principles they had transgressed. Negotiations and bribes are not accepted by the cosmic justice they had aroused. Attacks on its charges are never forgotten or forgiven by the divine protection they had contested. The universe's own court system was ready to deliver its verdict, and they were about to discover that. The events that followed can only be explained as the precise application of divine justice. Every individual who had taken part in the plot against you started to face repercussions that were precisely suited to their individual offenses against you. The betrayer who had given your adversaries information ended up alone. Their friends deserted them when they realized how deeply deceitful they were, and their family turned against them when the truth about their double existence came to light. Your enemies were visiting hospitals on a regular basis with ailments that seemed to defy medical explanation, while you were growing stronger and healthier every day. Their own bodies were exhibiting the illness they had attempted to infect you with through their rituals. Some became unwell with enigmatic symptoms that were difficult for medical professionals to identify. Others suffered from illnesses that appeared to have no evident origin and started suddenly. Some experienced mental health problems that necessitated hospitalization right away. The spiritual attacks they had launched against you were the primary cause of every symptom they were exhibiting. The irony was perfect. The anguish they had wished upon you was now their constant companion. The uncertainty they had attempted to instill in your head was impairing their own judgment. The weakness they had intended you to suffer was depleting their own energy. As they sought therapy for ailments with spiritual rather than physical roots, medical expenditures were mounting. Since karmic consequence presenting as physical reality was the cause of their misery, no doctor could assist them. Your adversaries were unaware that many of their spiritual attacks also amounted to real crimes in the material world, such as identity theft for ritual purposes, theft of personal property for spell work, various types of fraud and conspiracy charges. In certain cases, far more serious offenses that the authorities were only now starting to investigate. Covertly, federal agents had been assembling cases that would surprise all parties. Experts were uncovering digital traces your adversaries believed they had covered. The origins of financial transactions were being identified. People were coming out with details regarding plans and discussions. There was mounting evidence of a well-planned conspiracy that went beyond several legal lines. Others faced financial fines that would leave them permanently indebted, while others faced charges that might land them in prison for decades. They were all learning that believing you are above the law because you are working in spiritual realms does not shield you from repercussions on earth. Search warrants were being carried out, arrests were being made, and court dates were being set when such religious activities involved criminal activity. The same people who believed they were untouchable were now in handcuffs and facing charges they never would have thought to confront. If you want to witness God's miracles, act now. Contribute $100 or more through Super Thank You on YouTube. Your offering is like a seed that comes back to you when planted. Let His light illuminate your steps. Every donation is an echo in His plan. Your adversaries were discovering that both spiritual and legal avenues are used by divine justice. The effects that would have a long-term impact on your adversaries' family lines were the most terrible of all. They not only created karma for themselves when they chose to utilize ritual magic and blood sacrifice against you, but they also triggered spiritual repercussions that would spread like poison through their bloodlines. Their family now had a permanent attachment to the uncontrollable beings they had summoned. As a result of the decisions made by their family, children and grandchildren who had nothing to do with the attacks on you would now experience spiritual persecution. Previously fortunate family lines were now cursed. It would take millennia to purge the darkness that had formerly contaminated bloodlines that once carried positive energy. Until someone in their family was strong enough to end the cycles they had established, the negative energy your opponents had produced was circulating through their family trees, causing dysfunction, illness, and failure to recur. In the meantime, the exact opposite was happening in your own family line. Blessings that had lain dormant for decades were suddenly coming to life. Family members who had never displayed psychic skills were now developing spiritual gifts. In order to reward future generations, divine favor was already pouring through your ancestors and would continue to do so through you. While destroying their own bloodline, they succeeded in blessing yours after attempting to curse it. The justice was absolute, and the irony was flawless. Something wonderful started to happen in communities you were unaware of as your victory became indisputable. Others with heavenly connections, other gifted people, and other selected ones had been observing your predicament and were astounded by what they saw. Stories that should have been unserviceable were being circulated about the individual who had survived. The person who transformed every curse into a blessing was the subject of stories. Legends were being formed about the chosen one who exemplified what full-power heavenly protection looks like. People in circles where such recognition truly means something were speaking your name with reverence. Opportunities in the actual world were emerging seemingly out of nowhere as a result of this spiritual awareness. People who knew exactly who you were and what you could do were connecting with you. Doors that had not been visible before were opening. Resources that were ideal for your objectives and needs were starting to appear. You were entering a realm of abundance and support that mirrored your actual self and mission. A community that embraced and supported your heavenly mission was replacing the one that had attempted to destroy you. Your life was growing extraordinarily wealthy because of your spiritual capabilities, the same skills your foes had attempted to steal. The cosmos was making sure you received material and spiritual restitution for what you had gone through. You were getting exponentially more money than had been spent trying to destroy you. As people realized how powerful and genuine your skills were, some of this richness began leaking through your spiritual activity. Some were arriving through opportunities and investments that appeared to have been carefully planned by God. As retaliation for their fraud attempts, some were coming through the very inheritance your adversaries had attempted to take, which was now larger than ever. All of it demonstrated that attacking a chosen person doesn't only back down, it also ensures that the victim will receive immeasurable blessings as the cosmos righted the wrong you tried to inflict. Your adversaries had put money into your demise and were now powerless to stop it from paying off, making you rich while leaving them penniless. Your financial independence was being built on the money they had lost. The pattern became evident when you looked back on everything that had transpired. Each attack on you had ultimately strengthened your position. Your true allies have been exposed by each betrayal. Every time someone tried to steal from you, you ended up getting even more than you would have initially. Without realizing it, your adversaries had turned into the tools of your ascent. Their spiritual assaults had compelled you to learn and hone skills you may not have realized you had. Because of their legal challenges, you now have resources and protections that you otherwise wouldn't have. You were able to connect with communities where you actually belong despite their attempts to exclude you. They wrote the most impactful chapter of your beginning instead of the finish they had planned to write. They had become the inadvertent architects of your success since every tactic they had used against you had backfired so badly. The malignancy they disseminated had been insufficient to harm an individual functioning under divine control. Their falsehoods had been too obvious to deceive anyone who mattered. Their falsified proof had been too blatantly fraudulent to withstand scrutiny. You are not an ordinary person. You're not only getting by. You're not only surviving. You're a true one. You have been selected. People who are motivated by fear, envy, or spiritual darkness cannot change your destiny. Your adversaries threw everything at you, but you continue to stand tall in ways that make it clear who you are and what you are capable of. Your life's potential is only limited by what you have already experienced. You are now eligible for even bigger conflicts, more advanced service levels, and more potent manifestations of divine authority because of your triumph over these specific adversaries. You are qualified for assignments that call for that degree of tried and true strength because of your shown ability to defeat coordinated spiritual assault. The abundance that will be placed under your care is far more than the prosperity that is already coming your way. The platform you will be given to assist others will begin with the recognition you are currently receiving. The authority you will possess as you fulfill your complete mission is simply a glimpse of the protection that has been displayed around you. Unintentionally, your adversaries did you a favor by giving you the precise resistance you needed to build the spiritual muscles you'll need for all that comes after. They provided you with a triumphant tale that will inspire others, open doors, and prove your suitability for more challenging tasks. You have won the fight, not just this particular battle, but the whole war. Not only are your adversaries vanquished, but they are completely obliterated. Your betrayers are ostracized in addition to being exposed. In addition to failing, your enemies are eaten by the identical darkness they attempted to employ against you. You're doing well. You're getting up. You're evolving into the person you were always intended to be. Greetings on your triumph, selected one. There's no question that you are a real person since you are still here, still standing and still getting stronger.